welcome to Supersystems, human supersystems. Now in physics, a supersystem is a complex system. It's a system that relies for its gauge measurement on things such as symmetry, energy quotient, biocentric mechanisms, and so forth. There are crystalline supersystems, and the list goes on, but we're not going to go into too much detail about what they are. You can always look them up. In human terms then, a supersystem is one that is also complex. And it correlates roughly to what I've drawn on this board. I say roughly because, of course, there are lots of permutations to what constitutes a supersystem, how it can be put together, and so on and so forth. But we have to take into account the uniqueness of all systems in natural existence. Here I've got a collection of dots. Now they might look fairly random spacing, placement, etc.
But in actual fact, you can join these dots. And what you'd find if you were to join these dots is lots and lots of triangulations.
Now, I can go on triangulating these dots and joining them together, kind of ad infinitum. And you can continue to form this matrix as long as you want to. It depends on the size of the system. And how it works together, of course, is what every company or community ideally wants. It wants everybody to be able to work together. To achieve that equilibrium, there needs to be a sense of purpose or a sense of identity. If you look at a supersystem in crystalline form, for instance, that sense of identity will produce a diamond or an emerald. But the subsystem of the structure will remain roughly the same, even though it's got its individual independent identity and it fits within a sector category, as we've just described. What links all these together in human nature terms is behaviour, attitude, the way we think, the way we correspondingly react to each other, the way we communicate. And communication is really the bedrock of the energy of this human supersystem. Communication is something that very commonly breaks down in companies, or is at least challenged, especially when the company grows to a certain size.
If there are 5 or 6 people within a company, then it could be considered to be a fairly simple molecule.
And the structure of that communication and that cohesion between the team is going to be reasonably well balanced out as a natural consequence of there being very few people. But when you add more and more people, the whole system becomes more complex and more susceptible, therefore, to different forms of energy coming in. And, of course, no prizes for guessing what kind of energy can permeate the system the larger and the more unwieldy it gets. That energy is, of course, negativity. Now, negativity follows the path of least resistance. It tends to absorb the human psyche in senses of resentment, blame, despair, despondency, depression even.
It can sink the whole dynamic of the collective into something that becomes more inert than energetic.
Whereas positivity does exactly the opposite. Positivity energizes the company upwards and makes for more productivity, more cohesion, and more communication flow.
Better communication flow.
So in getting this balance with the human supersystem in place, you have to address the quotient of its energy. So how do you establish this? Well, you'll notice here I've drawn waves. And the waveform is what all energy rests upon. We are, in fact, when we're not in particle format, like real, physically, we are waveforms just like everything else. So we only adopt this particle format at this particular moment in time, the present.
Your present reality is when you adopt your particle form.
The rest of the time you're a waveform. You're in superposition, which is a state of probability. You may do one thing or you may do another. So there is always this probability quotient in the way in which a macrocosm or a supersystem of human beings behaves. Negativity being what it is, it has a tendency to drive the bus towards, as I said, these paths of least resistance, where people become less than they could be. Lifted, it energizes itself into more productivity, more harmony, and more cohesive behavior towards best practice. Because that's ultimately what we all want. We want the best for ourselves. We want the best for each other. Nobody really wants to be destructive or disruptive or negative. But the tendency is to blame another sector or to accuse another party of being responsible for whatever the negativity is that we feel. This again is human nature.
It's just the way we work.
And we spoke a moment ago about the identity of all entities, the identity of entities, crystalline, diamonds, so forth. The identity of a supersystem in the human context relies, as I said, upon its sense of purpose, its direction. And that's where mission comes in. There's an apex, the directorship at the top, and they tend to create the mission for the company, the vision of where that company wants to go. If everyone is in alignment, understands it and adopts it through choice, it's very important, it's got to be through choice, then this balancing act that we're talking about here can be achieved. An equilibrium equals alignment, engagement. In quantum mechanical terms, there is something called entanglement. And entanglement bonds things together. It makes them react and respond identically at exactly the same time. And you will find this factor present in all supersystems. It's very important when it comes to understanding how the social matrix really works. Because we don't just live with energy, we don't just have to deal with it. We manifest energy through our thoughts and our attitudes, our behaviors, the way we communicate with each other, and so on. The waveform, the bedrock on which we flow, is also aligned in an ideal world with this mission, this objective that the company has. And when these things come together, then it can do incredible things. It can break records, it can become a multinational company, it can transform itself from what it was to what it wants to be, simply by applying certain laws of physics and certain laws of human behavior into the equation. And for the time being, I just would love you to consider how important the supersystem is to the energy and the equilibrium and ultimately the success of your company, community, or social collective. So thank you very much for watching. I hope I get to speak to you soon. In the meantime, take care and have fun. Cheerio.